All right, today we're gonna start sanding. We're gonna get the bottom of timeout completely cleaned up, and we're gonna start doing some repairs. Time to sand. So like you saw in the last video, we stripped a lot of the paint off utilizing the citrus strip, but we have a lot of residual paint left over. The citrus strip did not want to take off. I don't want to citrus strip it again. It's not as much work, but it just takes a lot of time. At this point, I want to go ahead and just start sanding. So I'm going to sand the rest of this off and get this hole nice and clean and ready for repairs and also ready for paint. All right, we're all sanded up. Looking good. I still have some areas like right there and there. Well, that's actually through the Gelcoat, so we got to deal with that. But down there, that all needs to be sanded. But before we can do that, we got to get this boat up off the trailer. You might notice the trailer looking a little better. We're going to have a whole conversation about that in the next video. But at this point, we're all sanded up. I need to figure out what we're gonna do with the bottom. I know that I'm gonna be doing something for bottom paint. I just don't know what it is. Okay, so now that we've got things sanded, I wanted to start experimenting with the, I guess you call it a fairing compound or a filler. We're using, let's see what we're using here. I don't even remember. So we're using a laminating resin with a hardener, and we're using some 407. This was recommended by the boatyard. So what I'm doing is I mixed up like a peanut butter type paste, and I've coated it on all the areas on the rudder, and this is all getting sanded back off. I probably put it on too heavy, but I have to build up a lot of areas where there was damage. The damage on it is mostly on the left-hand side, which is where the motor is. So I'm pretty sure this is all prop strikes. And then this looks like the rudder just hitting the ground a bunch of times. So we're gonna use, I've usually used epoxy. West Systems has kind of been my go-to on my past projects, but in this case, we're using a polyester resin because I want to go back and try to gel coat this. So this is our first kind of experiment to figure out, you know, what we're going to be doing on the rest of the boat. So I'm using this as kind of my test bed. So after this all cures, I'll sand it all off, and then I probably have to reapply it again. But to get the shape I want, once we have the shape I want to roll some gel coat on it with a roller and see how it does and see if I can sand it smooth to a finish I'm happy with. If so, that's going to be great because it can kind of tell me where I'm going to use gel coat as opposed to where I'm going to use paint. So thought I might as well make use of it. I probably mixed up way too much than I needed to, but I did 2 ounces. Next time I'll probably do 1. But or have a lot more projects prepped and ready. I didn't have as much stuff prepped and ready for this, so we'll see how this turns out. You know, now that we've got most of this stuff sanded off the bottom of the boat, I do want to start filling in the defects. This will be my first step in kind of experimenting with that. So we're back at it. We got our polyester resin with our West Systems 407 low density filler. We've got that cured on our rudder. I also ended up putting a little bit back on the transom of the boat. There were some areas there I had extra. I didn't want to like waste it. So I went and put it in. I don't know if that'll be perfect. I'm kind of on the fence of what areas I want to use 406 filler, which is a micro balloon, compared to 407. West Systems kind of said everything I'm doing the 407 should be fine, but if I'm doing something that's going to be under a lot of abuse, which back by the transom area I'll show you might be an issue. We'll look at that here in a minute. But let me show you what the rudder looks like. All right, so here is our rudder. Sorry about the sun here. But this stuff is nice and hard. It cured really well. So I've got these areas. We're gonna now just sand this back down. I'm gonna use my dual action rotary sander, and I'm gonna use an 80 grit to kind of knock this stuff down. It's supposed to sand pretty well. It is hard, which is good, because we need to get this this shape back into place, because this is where it was all torn down. So I built a lot on here, so we're going to sand a lot of it back off, and we still got other areas like this to do, but I wanted to at least kind of get a start on this and just make sure I'm using the right stuff before I go too far with it. All right, the lighting is not great, a lot of shadows going on, but I wanted to show you the other area. So since I had extra, I went ahead and filled in some damage that was back here on the kind of the transom area. This is where the outboard's going to mount. I started filling in some of the holes that were drilled here that don't need to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this down with the 80 grit sandpaper as well, just to kind of see how this comes out. There's more damage here. There's stuff here. There's a crack here. So I probably have to do a lot more here. This is the area that I kind of am second guessing myself, and I should have maybe used the 406 with the micro balloons. The only thing with the 406, so they say it's really difficult to sand, but it's stronger, but they also say this should be strong enough, because all we're doing is clamping the outboard over this, and it just kind of rests on the top here, but there's clamps that go on the back side, so I think it should be good. But let me go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and yeah, we can start. Now that we've got everything sanded, we're able to start, well, preliminary sanded, we're able to start filling stuff in like this. All right, that went pretty well. This stuff sands really good, very quickly with the 80 grit. I think I'm done with the 80 grit at this point because I don't want to take too much off. I'll probably have to build more up on top of it, which is kind of part of the process. You sand down, you add a little more, you sand down. It's going to be kind of an over and over type thing. But overall, I'm really happy with it. So let me show you what it did. All right, so here's the bottom. So this is all, filled in. The shape is not quite perfect. I've got some pictures of I think this is the high performance rudder, they call it, for the McGregor. I think I need to build a little bit more up here, but I need to kind of work out the pattern. So I need to kind of figure that, but these other areas, they filled in nice and smooth. I might have to, on one of them, I might have to add a little bit more. But we're gonna again get gel coat on these. And I need to drill this guy out. This hole was just so torn up around it. Sorry, this hole was so torn up around it, I need to repair that correctly. And then I think I need to fill this guy, and this is something somebody drilled later. So when I go back and I add more here in some of the other areas, I'll fill this in as well. I need to clean the inside of it with isopropyl alcohol or acetone. And then back here on the back, so there was a chunk off here. So I've got this all sanded back to shape. It's probably gonna need a little bit more. But overall, that looks pretty good. So this was a pretty good chunk. You can see they're missing out of the back of it. That's now all filled in. So I'll probably need to add, like I said, add a little bit more of the compound, sand more off, and just get this really to the shape that I like. And I'm going to start going to higher grit sandpaper, so getting away from the 80 and maybe start going with like a 220 or something, because the 80 does make it really rough. So yeah, this is cool. I'm pretty happy about this stuff, and it seems to be working really, really well. It's just going to take time to get everything, get it corrected. All right, just like on the rudder, this went great. Sands really, really well. I definitely started sanding a little bit more into it because it definitely has some additional repairs I need to make. So I went ahead and just kind of started grinding some of that out with the sander while I was sanding. And that way we can go back and add the areas we need to add with the additional filler. So let me show you.
how it looks.
I wanted to really tackle this area. There was a lot of damage back here. All these little spots were broken gel coat, and also there were holes that needed to be filled. So this is something I can now gel coat, which is what I think my plan is. I also, if you can tell, let me turn the camera, but all on the inside here, this all had to get taken care of as well. But we're good. So this is the hole. I still got to get these screws out of here. They're rusting, and then I'm going to lay up a little fiberglass behind it and fill those. But this is basically the well for the outboard. So our outboard's going to clamp right here. So I want to get this all taken care of. And again, it was really damaged. Whoever put the previous motor on it, it was rattling around and scratching it all up. So we're going to put a nice heavy coat of gel coat to protect that on there. But we've got all the body work done. I even started catching into little areas over here that needed to be filled in. So we're looking good. Okay, so it's a few days later. Lots of sanding, but I think our rudder's good. And everything you see was damage. So like I talked about earlier in the video, this side looks like it had a lot of like prop damage. So I think it was turned into the prop. So we're gonna need to be careful about that and take care of that. There was a hole that was put in the rudder that was not necessary for lifting it, so we filled that back in. And then this whole end was really ground off. There was really nothing here. So we filled that back in and we got the shape that it's supposed to be. And same thing on the other side. Did some repair up here where it was damaged, kind of filled in around the holes because they were all tore up. Filled in. Here's the other side of that hole that got filled in. And then the rest of our building up and reshaping our bottom edge of the rudder. So at this point, we're ready to put a finish on this. I have to say this stuff worked really well. It was very easy to sand. It feels like it's extremely durable. I mean, it's super, super hard. So I'm not worried about the structural integrity. I don't think it's going anywhere. We just need to put a proper surface on it. So at this point in my mind, I believe I am going to try to roll on gel coat. That's what I'm thinking. So this might change, but that's what I'm thinking so far. All right, so I am at a point right now where I want to put some gel coat on that rudder. I want to see how the gel coat's going to go. So I'm going to show you what I've got. I have two products, without wax and with wax. So if you are watching this video and you're new to gel coat, the simple way of putting this is if you're only going to do one coat, then you can use the with wax. If you're going to do multiple coats, you want to first use without wax, but the very last coat you want with wax, or you want to add wax to the gel coat that doesn't have the wax. What the wax does is the wax is basically what allows this stuff to cure completely hard. If you try to let this cure without wax, unless you put like a PVA over it, which I think is polyvinyl alcohol, I think, or you have gel coat with wax, it's not going to ever like completely cure and get hard. It's going to stay kind of rubbery and tacky. But what happens is you don't want to put something over something that has wax in it, because the wax will keep it from adhering to it. So this is going to be my last coat. So what I plan on doing is I'm going to mix up some of this stuff, and I've got a nice paintbrush for tipping, a Worcester Pro. I've got some of these Worcester Red Feather. These were like pretty expensive. I mean, not crazy, but a 2-pack of these. These are supposed to be really good for a smooth surface. But I also got foam, because I saw some guys were like, oh, you know what, foam, it leaves bubbles. But other guys like, oh, the foam, it comes out better than anything else. So I got a couple things to try, and I'm going to use the rudder as kind of my test bed. It's not a huge surface, so if I don't like what's happening, I can always go back and sand it off. So the plan right now is to mix them without the wax. I think I want to start with the foam. I just want to see what it does. And then we'll just start putting some of this stuff down and kind of see how it works. First coat, non-wax gel coat. is on the rudder. It rolled out pretty well. You definitely see some lines and texture, which I'm not overly concerned with because the plan is to put a couple coats on. I want to put enough coats where it covers the repairs I've done. Let me actually show you. So you can see it. You can see the texture. The camera picks it up, but you can see the marks like there. See that there and this. So I want to get with the non-wax that is coated and covered completely. Once that's covered, then the last coat will be the with wax. So we can get this stuff to really cure up nice and hard. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back and sand it. It should be pretty easy. I don't know what grit I'm gonna use, maybe like a 220. I gotta figure that out. But I'll do a light sanding to knock down any texture. And then at that point, you know, we can go as far as we wanna go. Do we wanna then wet sand it up to like 1,000 and do we wanna, you know, probably do a quick buffer and polish? I don't know, we'll figure that out. But it's going on fine. It's got a little texture, you can see it, but it covered nice and evenly. So I don't like to waste products. And since I had extra, I went ahead and did the first coat on this guy, which is the little transom outboard mount. So I did not touch any of this because I want to do a bigger batch for this and I want to really prep the area. But I went and just cleaned this with acetone, and I went ahead and got the first coat on this as well. So it seems like I'm mixing up about 3 ounces. 3 ounces is enough to do one side of the rudder and also do this guy here, which is great. So I think I'm gonna need at least 1, maybe 2 more coats to completely hide those repairs. And then once we get that on there, we'll switch over to the with wax, let it cure, and then we can start sanding and see how well this turns out. Okay, so we got our final coat. So I did 3 coats of non-wax and 1 nice heavy coat of with wax. So now this baby should, sorry about the shadow, should cure. So from a distance, it looks awesome. Up close, there's a lot of little texture spots. Those might be the air bubbles people were talking about with the foam rollers. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna let this cure. What's done is done. I will then go back after it's fully cured and I will sand it. I need to think about the sanding paper I wanna use, but I think it's gonna be maybe like a 400 or something. It's gonna be fairly fine because I don't wanna dig into the coat too much. I just wanna knock off the little bumps, a little texture like you're seeing there. I wouldn't call it orange peel. It's kind of different. It's not like little dips. And then what we're gonna do is on the other side, which we're not gonna do in this video, but on the other side, we're gonna test the other rollers we have, which are those, I think they call them sheep rollers. They're like a red as opposed to the foam. We'll see how that does. And if that does better, then we know for other portions of the boat what kind of rollers we wanna do. But regardless, I'm really happy. It's gonna take some sanding, but it looks really good. The repairs, gosh, that sun. The repairs, they just disappeared. I mean, you can't really tell there was huge gouges and chunks missing out of this thing. So I'm really happy about that. So we'll get to the other side and we'll be able to we'll come back to this in one of the next videos and show you how that turned out. All right, so I think for this video, we're gonna kind of wrap it up here. You might see timeout is covered. So we made a lot of progress. You know, I've got the whole bottom of the boat sanded. I'm super happy about that. We got the rudder repaired and we repaired that little piece back on the transom as well where the motor mounts. We got that covered in gel coat. I'll have to sand that. So the other thing we've got to deal with, which is probably coming in the next video, is a more pressing matter besides figuring out what coats we're going to use and all that, and to continue with our repairs on the hull, is we need to get the title and registration taken care of. And that has been a bit of a fiasco, but I am right now in the middle of trying to get that taken care of so that this is officially our boat. And I think we're gonna tackle that in the next video because we're gonna have to do some things to the trailer. I believe there needs to be some kind of inspection on it. We're right now working with the original owner to get titles transferred, and I'll get into all that in the next video. So other than that, I think that's going to wrap us up here. Thank you for everyone who has watched and liked and commented. I really, really appreciate it. And if you want to help out with the project at all, please like, subscribe. You've got a Patreon on there. There's all kinds of things you could do to help the project if you want to. But at this point, I think I'm going to wrap it up, but we're going to keep trucking on this project because I really want to get it done as soon as possible because I'm anxious to actually get this thing out on the water.